Sam Workman, Director of the Institute for Policy Research and Public Affairs at WVU, back with you to talk about sort of the major themes emerging from our case studies and citizen deliberation around these, focused on their values for election reform. So when we talked with citizens after our discussions around our case studies, three themes emerged. Two were obvious and very salient in larger discussions around election reform, and one we didn't really expect and isn't that prominent in most elite discussions around election reform. The first, of course, is access, and so there was a large contingent of citizens who felt that anyone who had the legal right to cast legitimate ballots at an election should be able to do so without a significant impediment of our laws and policies surrounding the administration of elections. The second large group really valued this general and larger notion of election security, that in order to build faith in government and trust in our elections, the law should seek to, as much as possible, minimize threats to election security. Both themes in our discussions were elaborated well by citizens, and it's interesting to note that in most of these discussions, citizens didn't really presage one of these over another or hold one to the exclusion of another. Nearly all citizens value both access to the ballot in all its legitimate forms and a concern for making sure we can trust our elections and that we have safe, secure elections. The third theme to emerge from our discussions really centered on something much less talked about in circles surrounding election reform, and that is the bureaucratic administration of elections or the logistics of elections. And so we had a considerable contingent of our citizens deliberating about whether or not state and local officials and election offices in charge of elections could implement many of these reforms, and whether it would overwhelm them, whether there was enough resources for implementing such reforms. And this concern arose out of a feeling that many reforms might just be not feasible administratively, and send communities, make communities anxious and disrupt communities when ballots are sort of counted late and we have to wait on results and these sorts of things. Really, a major tension undergirding nearly all of our themes and discussions surrounded the difference between individual versus collective responsibility for ensuring access and security to elections. So many of our citizens really felt that each individual citizen, member of the community, has an individual responsibility as a citizen of the state and the larger country to make sure they are registered and take action necessary to get to the polls and cast a ballot in accordance with the law. And it was their responsibility as citizens to ensure that happened. The second contingent felt that the community more broadly had a responsibility to individuals to make sure fellow citizens were not impeded in any way in their ability to cast legitimate ballots in the elections. And this fault line is important for understanding disagreements surrounding election reform and really many other types of public policy initiatives we might have. And I think this larger tension sort of illustrates the importance of value-laden reforms, because in understanding sort of the cores of these disagreements about election reforms, you begin to see the spaces where we might engage one another in a faithful way about the prospects for election reform and what types of reform are likely to garner support from the other side. And at a very minimum, we understand why we disagree on the major issues. So this is going to conclude our program. Hopefully this was helpful and gives us some perspective about the importance of beginning to have values discussions again, and also the spaces it might create for civic life and for understanding what policy reforms we might work together on, and at a minimum, understanding our neighbors. Thank you very much. That's all.